All right, what's up, y'all? Um, all right, so it looks weird recording myself because the camera is right there, and then me is right there, and it looks like I'm looking off in the distance. Anyway, so I had a great client experience yesterday, and I wanted to share some. I wanted to try to relive it because I felt like there were some really good learning points from it, and I have stuff like this happen all the time, and I mean to get on camera, and I don't. And I want to share information that's helpful for all of us. That's the only reason I'm here. That's why I'm doing all this stuff. You rarely see me pitch anything because I just want to share this message. It's so great, right? So anyway, I had a new person yesterday, a referral from Adam P. I'm not going to say his last name because I don't know his last. I don't know how to say his last name. Sorry, Adam, but thank you so much if you're watching, which I know you don't do social media. So I had a new client yesterday, and it happens to be his housekeeper, and she doesn't speak good English, which is a really great thing because the language gets super simplified, the concepts get super simplified, which I think tend to be, I don't know, some really magical stuff comes out of those really basic and simple conversations because we have to make sure that we understand each other, right? So anyway, the reason that she's come to see me is because she went to the doctor recently and she has osteoporosis and other things. You know, we dug into other ways that she's feeling, low energy, digestive issues, and she comes in and like everyone else, like she probably has an idea of what a nutrition person is going to say. And an amazing, beautiful woman. She's in her 60s and just has a really good heart and doesn't like the idea of being on medications and stuff like that. So she's taking ibuprofen most days. Actually, the doctor recommended that she take ibuprofen every night for her joint pain. So she's got joint pain, osteoporosis, digestive issues, low energy, and I was telling her, listening to her, about all the different things that are going on. I've got an osteoporosis protocol, but the protocol does not make any sense in the context of not doing the right thing. So our first focus is always just getting the diet figured out and getting that straight and feeling good from that before we start to bring in supplements and protocols. So as we're sitting there talking, she's taking ibuprofen for inflammation every day, and I know in my mind that if you take ibuprofen or NSAIDs on a regular basis, here and there it's fine for temporary pain relief or something, or inflammation, right? But if you're taking it consistently, you're shunting your body's natural ability to anti-inflame, which causes a lot of problems in other places, right? So if I'm taking it for a specific pain, and it makes that pain feel better temporarily, I'm impacting my body's ability to anti-inflame in other places, which contributes to a lot of the problems that we see today. Diabetes, pre-diabetes, blood sugar handling issues, like those all have some etiology in inflammation, right? So we just need to be aware of that. Anyway, so we're just talking things out initially, and I told her, I said, look, what we're going to recommend today is going to be very different from what you're probably used to hearing, because what most people do out there is not right. We don't think it's right because everybody's having a really hard time with it. So this is your first time meeting me. So how are you going to trust me? Because I want you to give this a shot. The trust is going to be built when you do this and you feel better and things change. But like right now, and I don't know why I went there with this, but I was just like, how do we build some trust right here? And she was like, well, I've seen Adam transform over the past year. I mean, the dude has lost so much weight, it's ridiculous. And she says that she's even noticed like skin issues and things that just aren't there, and he looks just amazing. And she's like, that's enough for me to give this a shot. I'm like, all right, awesome, cool. So we get into it, and we're talking about like our definition of food. And I tell her, I have her take her own notes, right? So the first thing that we talk about is, what is food to us? What are we doing with food, right? And of course, the first response is always, we're eating for energy. So I tell her, this is what we do with food, right? Number one, we're focused on nutrients. And I said, do you understand what nutrients are? And she said, yes, I think so. She said, nutrients feed the body. And I was like, yes, I love that answer. That's really good. All right. And I said, all right, so let's build on that and move on to the next one. So the next thing that we're focused on is training the body to be self-sufficient. Do you know what self-sufficient means? Do you know what it means to make your body self-sufficient? Or what you think that I mean when I say that? And she says, you want your body to be okay on its own. And I said, yes, that's so great. I mean, just right there, her understanding of that is like so far ahead of where a lot of people come in here. Like it's like, this is so foundational and fundamental, right? So on the nutrients piece, we talked about what is the difference between nutrients and calories? What is a calorie? And she said energy. I said, that's great, right? So if we eat food that are nutrients, nutrients build this body, contribute to this body. Calories are energy. All right, and I tried to explain to her what we want, ideally, is we want the body to be self-sufficient, meaning it makes its own energy, okay? So with that basic understanding, we started to go through, and also before that, we talked about, I was like, what do you eat in a day normally? And she eats a traditional modern Mexican diet. I say modern Mexican because traditional or ancestral Mexicans don't eat this way, right? But she eats tortillas every morning with some cheese, tortillas in the evening. She usually only eats a couple meals a day, does some coffee or something in between, some diet sodas, some zero sodas and stuff like that. So now we get into like the foods, right? So we talk about our first food group, and I had this little kind of mini guide that we started her on. This is our real food, just the basics guide. So our definition of food, we have our first food group is animal meats, right? And I tell her animal meats by far give us the most nutrients of all the foods that we're going to eat. And the reason for that is because I am an animal. If I eat animal, I give this animal what I need to make this animal, right? It's pretty simple. And I don't have to go into the human physiology and anatomy and physiology and how our digestion works and all that stuff. Like, that makes sense to her, right? And she's like, okay, wow. And you can see her smiling, things are starting to connect, right? So if I'm eating for nutrients and I want to eat to give my body what I need, animal meats are going to be extremely beneficial. And she was like really excited about that. And then we also got into like, we want chicken legs and drumsticks and wings because we're getting skin, we're giving our body skin, we're getting connective tissue, we're giving our body connective tissue and cartilage. We want fatty cuts, we love pork, we love beef. And she's lighting up because she's like, okay, I understand it, I'm getting it, right? And so any questions on that place? No, she loves meat, so good, we're good to go there. Go on to fats. What's the main fats that you consume on a daily basis? And of course she does, which a lot of people, Mexicans, older people, that age frame that haven't heard this info, she does a lot of canola oil and vegetable oil. And I was like, okay, so what we want is traditional fats. We want ancestral fats. And I said, where does canola oil or vegetable come from? How is it made? And she was like, has no idea. All right. So the first fat on our food groups and our healthy fats is butter. Butter is our top healthy fat. And I told her, like the majority, 90% of what I do involves butter. And that keeps things very simple and easy. But butter's a nutrition powerhouse. Butter has fat-based energy, easy for the body to use for energy. And I said, where does butter come from? She says, cow. I was like, yeah, absolutely. It comes from a cow. We know where it comes from. So that's traditional fat. What else might be traditional fats? And so, she asked about avocados. Like, yeah, absolutely. Avocados, guacamole, animal fats. So pig fat, beef fat, duck fat. She's like, really? I was like, yeah, because what are we? Like, we resemble more beef and pig than we do anything else, right? So if I'm eating beef fat and pig fat, I give this body the fat that I need to make this fat, right? And it completely made sense to her. So great to watch this. And then we get to the vegetables. She doesn't really like vegetables that much. And I said, well, if you cook your vegetables in butter, it's going to make them better. And she's like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. And that makes me very excited. Then we get down to our little carbohydrate plate. And we start talking about carbohydrates. All right, so we have our carbohydrate plate, which is our safe starches in our fruit, which is smaller, and we recommend those things be measured out. But we had a little conversation about carbohydrates. I said, now, carbohydrates, do you know what carbohydrates are? She goes, well, I know what they are. I can explain what I know they are. I don't necessarily know what they do, right? I said, so what are some examples? And she said, like the tortillas. And I was like, yeah, that's great. So carbohydrates. Now, here's something to understand. If I want to eat for nutrients, I want to eat things that have nutrients, and I don't want to have calories that don't have nutrients. Okay, so I want to be aware of that. If I have foods that have calories with little nutrients, I have to be aware of what they are, and I want to moderate the amounts of those things. Okay, and I want to make sure they come from the right sources. So we talked about our good carbohydrates. So we talked about sweet potatoes, yams, white rice versus brown rice. Our ancestral tubers and plantains and things like that, and then also fresh fruits. And so I said, what are some carbohydrate things that you're consuming right now? She said, her tortillas. And I said, so tortillas, are they carbohydrates or are they nutrients? And she said, carbohydrates. And I said, okay, good. So we already know that they're not nutrient dense and they're not building this body. That doesn't mean that they're completely out of play. But then we talked about, like, some carbohydrates are safe, they're clean, they're okay in small amounts. And corn, wheat, and other grain-like flours like that are probably not the best thing in the world because they contain anti-nutrients. And I said, do you understand what I mean by anti-nutrients? She goes, the opposite of nutrients. And I said, yes, that's exactly right. So she understood that too. She understood that there's certain things that are not just not nutrients, they're anti-nutrients. So they're in the opposite direction of nutrients. They inhibit nutrient absorption and assimilation. And they're relatively high in carbohydrate and low in nutrients, which makes them suspect automatically, right? So anyway, we talked about our carbohydrates, and the rules around carbohydrates was basically we just want this smaller plate, smaller amounts, and we want them to come from the right sources, which means we're going to have to nix the tortillas. Now, the great thing is I showed her some pictures of some approved tortillas, right? So we have the Siete line that is in most health food stores. We have our homemade Manuela's tortillas. Manuela went through our progression years ago, and she created this recipe for some tortillas that are foldable and awesome, and they're great. So part of, what we're doing is having options that are made with the right ingredients, and she totally understood that. She was super excited about it. So then we finally get to the page where we talk about our ideal day's meals and how we structure all this, right? And so the way that we do this is we want to eat for nutrients the majority of the day. And the first part of the day, we want to give the body a signal of self-sufficiency, and we want to get the body. So I said, if we're trying to make our body self-sufficient, where does energy come from? And she said, food. I said, well, it can come from food, but where do we want it to come from? She's like, I'm not sure. I said, okay. So what is body fat? Do we understand what body fat is? And she said, no, I really don't understand what body fat is. Okay, I said, so body fat is energy. I said, remember Adam? He lost all that body fat. His body was using his fat for energy. That's how he lost all his body fat. And she started to get the understanding of it. She's like, okay, this is making sense. So if my goal is training the body how to use its own body fat for fuel, when that happens, we have consistent energy levels. We start to normalize our body weight over time, because that's what this is meant to be. This is meant to be a rechargeable energy source. And she started to understand that and get it. And she was really, really excited about it. So then I went back to, so tortillas in the morning, is that fat for fuel, carbohydrate for fuel? She said carbohydrate for fuel. Exactly, yes. All right, so let's move on from that. And then we went to the rest of the day. She only eats 2 meals a day anyway. I said, so we just want to make sure that we have our carbohydrates later in the day. And it was just such a beautiful conversation for her to understand and get this. And she was so excited walking out here. There's no doubt in my mind that she is going to do amazing, because we kept it simple. She understands we're eating for nutrients. We have to be cautious about carbohydrates. We want the carbohydrates to come from the right food sources. We want to time them right in the day. We want to moderate them to a degree. And she understood all of that. The lady's active. She has a very active job. She's on her feet a lot. And I just thought those were some really good points. So I think the big takeaways from that are, things don't have to be very complicated. We just want to eat for nutrients. We want to eat in a way that nurtures the body's ability to tap into its own fat stores for fuel. We call this self-sufficiency, because it contributes to self-reliance and the body's ability to do its own thing. And we want to always keep that in mind as we're eating food. That dictates a lot of our choices, right? So as I'm looking at something, whether I should eat it or not, is this contributing to this amazing body? And if it's not, it has to be suspect. If it's carbohydrate-based, it needs to be safe carbohydrates that are not anti-nutrient-based and cause digestive issues. And we want to make sure those are moderated. But in general, the majority of the things that we want to consume, we want to be giving this body what it needs, right? So even if there are approved desserts and starchy things and carbohydrates and chips and all those types of things, they're fine. We just have to understand it's not probably the best use of my eating energy or time. I want to focus on nutrient density, and then have a little bit of carbohydrates for sanity, maybe for performance or something like that. So anyway, hope that was useful. That's what I got today.